Morning, everyone. We're here again to have a look at the weekly energies for the period of what will it be, the 26th of May to the 1st of June. Fuck my life, man. Fucking June. Behave. 2025. I hope you're well. As always, we're using the Hexen 2. We're going to do things a little bit differently this week, though. I've had a nudge this morning to do what we would expect, which is to pull some energies of the week from this deck here. We'll clarify by way of this Wild Unknown deck. God, I couldn't remember what it was called there. But I've also got the Llewellyn, and I feel like in addition to what we've got going on here, we're also going to be pulling a card each for each sign, because I do feel like for some reason, and this is, this is just an intuitive nudge I've had this morning, so this is straight off the top of my head. For some reason, the experience of this week is going to differ by way of sign. I did ask whether it was, by element or modality, and the answer was it's by sign. So I don't know. Yeah. As ever, I have absolutely no idea what that fucking means, but we're going to be taking cards from that for each sign. So we'll do what we usually do here, and then we will just pull one card for each sign. Just give it, a minute on the different experiences of that. So I guess I'm going to shut the fucking window because someone has decided to use something loud somewhere in the mountains. Sound travels quite well around here. So let's just put those to one side for a second, and we're going to give these the nice big shuffle that we usually do. So there's 5. Oh, goodness. There's some cards down there. And then, these cards are fucking enormous, honestly. 4, 3, fucking hell. 2, and 1. We're going to cut the deck here, and we're going to take these cards from the top. So energies of the week can be expressed by way of the 2 of Swords, the King of Swords, and the Justice card. It's a very airy week, people. Now that's very, very interesting. I think this may be the first time that we've had a weekly reading that has been dominated by one element and one element alone. What do we have at the bottom of the deck? We have the 7 of Pentacles. So what's quite interesting about this is that it's layered. The energies of this week are really, really layered. And to wit then, and I wonder if this is why it's important to look at it through the lens of each sign this week. Sorry, there's a fucking fly in here. It's doing my nutting. It's layered because these are shades of the Justice card, right? The only thing that we've got missing here in terms of shades of justice is the Queen of Swords. Like for me, though, these the 2 of Swords, the Queen of Swords, which is missing, the King of Swords. These are shades of justice. These are elements of justice. So justice is a much bigger energy, which is all pervading, of things like the notion of judgment and decisions that are being made by way of balance and equilibrium, right? Bringing things back to some sort of functional balance. But as we know in the 2 of Swords, right, there's something kind of restrictive about the balance that is being, certainly the way that I read this card, that is being expressed in that 2 of Swords, because it's more like balance for balance sake. It's balance that comes from a rigidity of thinking, or a refusal to engage with the things that will actually break this deadlock that we find ourselves in. Now, interestingly, because the 7 of Pentacles is at the bottom of the deck, what we have here is something about the environment Let us not forget that that in some way mirrors back to us what our experience is. Something about the environment is not functioning quite the way that we would like it to do, right? There's a dissatisfaction, an ennui, a malaise about where we find ourselves. And then we've got these shades of balance, shades of judgment, shades of decision-making processes. I know I keep using the word judgment when I'm talking about justice, but I feel like that to some extent you cannot have justice without the prior judgment. That's why I keep bringing this in, right? It's almost like a foundation, even though it is a higher level card, or certainly, numerically, it's a higher level card. It comes further along in the major arcana. The pursuit of justice is always going to involve somewhere within that a judgment, a decision, some sort of thing. Now, we may not understand it, and I think that's very much about what the thrust of these cards are here, because the Two of Swords suggests to me obfuscated information. I've sometimes referred to this card as willful blindness, right? And it's because, for me, because twos represent an internal state. What we've got is a deadlock in the internal state because some part of our mind has screened off information that actually would be quite useful. And the reason why it's done that is because somewhere along the line it feels a bit like there's an inherent threat there, right? That's the reason why the mind screens off information. Some things that we, quite simply don't know that we don't know. Now, our minds have been complicit in creating that screen, in creating that obfuscation. And it's done it ostensibly to protect us, protect the ego. But I always get the feeling that because of the way that the card is presented, which is to say that the woman is blindfolded and she has her back to the moon, she has her back to the water, the focus is entirely on the swords, that there's a huge aspect of something that is being overlooked, deliberately ignored, because if we were to take that information into account, the decision would already be made, and something about the result of that is something that our mind has already perceived as a threat. Right? That's broadly how I see the energies of this card. So when we've got a state of, for the want of a better word, ignorance engaged over here, and then we have a decision-making process that is necessary and is showing up this week. And both of these predicated on a situation that is not entirely optimal. Somehow we need to try and find the balance of that here within the Justice card. Now, this Justice card here says one world government on it. I'll read you the words because I don't know what they say either. War can only be abolished by the establishment of a world government. Well, I have issues with that already. Anyway, all the researches of psychoanalysis, behaviorism and biochemistry will be brought into play. The Society of Experts will control propaganda and education. It will teach loyalty to the world government and make nationalism high treason. The government, being an oligarchy, will instill submissiveness into the great bulk of the population, confining initiative and the habit of command to its own members. It is possible that it may invent ingenious ways of concealing its own power, leaving the forms of democracy intact and allowing the plutocrats to imagine that they are cleverly controlling these forms. Gradually, however, as the plutocrats become stupid through laziness, they will lose their wealth. It will pass more and more into public ownership and be controlled by the government of experts. Thus, whatever the outward forms may be, all real power will come to be concentrated in the hands of those who understand the art of scientific manipulation. Now, that was actually written by Bertrand Russell in 1931. Gosh. There's the card. You can see why I was just having a little bit of trouble reading it there, because it's handwritten. Now, whether or not you subscribe to a conspiratorial view of what is going on in the world right now, where we are all being manipulated by, some sort of nameless other. Or whether you can see this as something spiritually allegorical, which is to say that there are lessons here about personal sovereignty, personal autonomy, taking responsibility for yourself, being your own fucking sovereign. Like, do you consent to be ruled, right? Whether we're talking about this metaphorically or we're talking about this really quite literally, I think the end result is the same. I want to be really clear about that. I think the end result is the same. Which is, it comes down to, will you allow the balance to be tipped in favour of those who would seek to rule you? Do you consent to be ruled by, for example, your emotions, or by a certain set of thought processes that have been programmed into you by society? Little fucking side quest here for you. I read an article, I got it on my phone somewhere the other day, about analysis of 1 cubic metre of brain that a particular set of scientists have been conducting. And they've managed to, using microscopy, like photograph this 1 millimetre cubed bit of brain tissue, such that you can see the synapses and you can see all the connections, you can see all of these amazing things. And they have deduced, and this is absolutely astonishing, that within that 1 millimetre cubed of brain, it is possible to store a petabyte. Hang on, here. I might have to pause the video here and go and look this up now, because I want to give it to you. I'm sure I screenshotted some of the important information because I was like, whoa, that is fucking mind-blowing. But unfortunately, right, I have ADHD, so I screenshot everything and then completely fucking forget to go back to it. Right, okay, here we go. I shall read this to you. I found the screenshot. In a tiny corner of the human brain, smaller than the head of a pin, lies a universe. A universe that, for the first time, has been mapped with detail that borders on the unimaginable. A team led by researcher Alexander Shapson Co. decided to focus their gaze and the full power of electron microscopy on just 1 cubic millimetre of the temporal cortex. The result? A nano-resolution map that reveals not only neurons, but synapses, vessels, connections, and patterns previously invisible to the eye of science. That tiny piece of brain generated 1.4 petabytes of information. To put it into perspective, it's more than 1,000 times the amount of data stored in an entire library. Now, it goes on to say that they've actually created a free tool for anyone, from neuroscientists to knowledge enthusiasts, to explore this cerebral microcosm. What's published in the journal Science isn't just a technological feat, it's a new door opened to the secrets of the human mind, a map that not only shows what we are, but what we still have to understand. Now, the reason why I bring this up, right, and I've been rolling this around, particularly since I read that a few days ago, is that the amount of information that exists in your mind, my mind, anybody else, like Bob from Number 74's mind, right? The amount of information that is stored in there is staggering. And for the most part, inaccessible. And the question that it raises for me is it really inaccessible? Or have we, as per the Two of Swords, started to really screen this shit off? Right, because in order to live the the material existence that we have been conditioned to live from day fucking one of arriving on this planet, there are certain things that we have to choose not to see. I've told you before about the time I took my daughter to the opticians a couple of years ago, a year or so ago now, and she completely failed to see this really bright line that was being beamed onto the wall. And as soon as the optician was finished and he turned the light off, he was an ophthalmologist actually, I said, what was that? Why? What was going on there? And he said, well, her mind is making a decision in the moment whether to see both lines in a blurry way or to see just one line really, really sharply. And her mind has decided she's just going to see that one line really sharply. And I was like, whoa, what the fuck? I was genuinely blown away by this. It's a very mundane example, but consider the possibility that we may be doing this day in, day out. Phenomena such as, I don't know, ghosts or anything like that, right? Fuck me. I mean, I've known people who've seen dragons fucking walking around on roofs of houses and stuff like this, right? Like, maybe the reason that we don't see so many things is because of this very, very narrow way that we interpret what it is to be alive on this planet, right? And in order to be successful as per the rules of the game as they appear to be down here on this planet, we have to choose not to fucking see things. We have to choose not to see that we are incredibly powerful elemental beings in our own fucking right that are literally creating reality as we are sitting here. 1.4 petabytes of information. Like, what the fuck are we using this all for? I think that everything that we experience, right, everything that we're exposed to is imprinting information on us 24/7, right? And the net result of that is that we have ended up with a society that is waiting to be told what to fucking do. It's almost like humanity has regressed to a childlike state, where the state, in fact, or perhaps, ideological leaders, whoever, like that, we're told what to do, we're told what to think, we're not shown how to think, we're told what to think, we're shown how to stay the fuck within our own lane. And I think that this is having to change because humanity is getting an upgrade here. And I'm not even sure that what we're getting is an upgrade. What I feel like is there are barriers being removed so that we can begin to start to access the kind of potential that has always existed within us, and yet we can't see. Right? Because something, in this case our mind, the literal piece of biology that is sifting through these billions of fucking little pieces of information, that little electrical feedback that we're getting off everything. And it only chooses to bring to the conscious awareness those things that fit with what we believe reality to be. There's a word for this. I forget what it was. I remember hearing Graham Hancock using it once, but Graham Hancock wouldn't fucking forget what the word is, right? But it's some sort of bias. Sure, I've got it written down somewhere. Some sort of bias, institutional bias against anything that has new information, right? We're only looking for the things that confirm what we already know. It's a kind of confirmation bias, but it's on an industrial scale, right? Consider the possibility that it's not that we need to learn something new. It is that we have to remember what we always knew. And that the first step of remembering what we always knew is reclaiming the sovereignty to explore that personally, rather than being told what to do by authority, by society, by familial expectations, by even, the inner critic. There are a lot of things in the world right now that, if you actually just sit and think about it in an open way, make no fucking sense whatsoever. None. Money, for example, actually literally makes no fucking sense. It's a social construct. It only means something because everybody agrees that it means something. It's not backed by gold. It's not backed by anything that has any kind of inherent value. Simply a bit of weird plasticized paper. Or, even worse, just zeros on a fucking screen somewhere, hopefully on the left-hand side of the decimal point rather than the... Oh. Yeah. You know what I mean. You know what I'm saying anyway. The Seven of Pentacles here feels like something that could be close to an existential crisis, and yet isn't. Because the dissection of these kind of things, right, the entertaining of these kind of ideas, it feels is being immediately replaced. It's not creating a vacuum. It's being immediately replaced by other ideas, which is to say the connectedness of all energies, not just between people, but between people and animals, and people and trees and mushrooms, and so on and so forth. There could be a whole Gaia thing going on here for sure, but you only have to have flirted briefly with astrology in the last year to know that what the planets are, the story that the planets are telling, the story that the planets are reflecting back to us, is one of revolution and intense change and, cosmic upgrades. Oh, I got really close to my ear. Sorry. And we can look around at our own lives and say, well, where is this happening? We could be looking around for the revolutionary leaders. We could be looking around for the people who are saying, no, I don't like that. We're not going to do it like that. We're going to do it like this. And we could choose to follow those people, but it's not what this week is about. I mean, yes, there will always be like inspirational people that are kind of sitting at the periphery of things, the contrarians perhaps, who are never, ever fucking popular in their own time. Right? There's always a long period of people castigating them for having heretical ideas that run counter to the narrative of reality as everybody is kind of comfortable with. But historically, we look back on these people and we go, oh, holy shit, look, like they stuck to their guns and they changed public opinion over time. And sometimes that doesn't even happen in their lifetime, right? Sometimes that just takes a few decades to get off the ground. But what if this time it was different? What if this time it wasn't about us waiting for the leaders to emerge? Bearing in mind what I've been saying for the last fucking 2 years, at least 2 years, there are teachers, leaders, guides amongst all of you. Why? It's not because you did 15 ayahuasca ceremonies and now you're enlightened. It's not because you burn patchouli. It's not because you wear nice crystals. Like, these can be indications of someone whose mind is more oriented towards what is happening here. But realistically, what we've got is people coming down to a point where they have the courage of their own convictions. This here is saying, what are your convictions? And how has your mind separated you from the possibility that you could be an architect of immense change simply by choosing not to be held captive to ideas, to structures, to concepts that up until this point you have done? Like, we've all experienced great change over the last few months, but I have to say, for the most part, it's very subtle. It's very nuanced. Those of us who were, hoping for some David Icke, like, period of transformation where you're literally standing, fucking light beaming into your head in Peru somewhere, probably have been largely disappointed, right? Because that's not really generally how this shit works. I'm not dissing David Icke. I'm just saying. On the collective level, on the individual level, for most people, it doesn't look like that. It's very subtle shifts, very subtle changes. It's playing with ideas that show us very, very quickly, objectively, that the mass delusion that we have been participating in, which is the rules of society, the structure of reality, all this kind of thing, like, are exactly that. And then the question arises, like, do you want to continue with that? Or do you want to do something different? Now, the willingness to engage with those very subtle, very nuanced energies within your own life and say, it is fucking offensive. And I genuinely, I believe this. It is fucking offensive, that notion that we must pay to live. I find it fucking offensive. I think it's fucking offensive that you need a license to do, 57 different fucking things. I find the notion of government offensive. I am a raging libertarian, if you had not noticed. The only way that there is a mass shift in consciousness, to my mind, is if we each individually, like a little drop in the ocean, challenge our own cognitive biases, challenge our own idea of what reality is start to perceive something that is so much bigger. I was telling a client the other day about the point where my relationship with my Morrigan, who was on the thumbnails for last month's thing, completely changed, because she was quite guarded and she was quite. It took a lot to learn to trust us, but I can pinpoint the exact night that it changed. She beamed a fucking thought into my head. It sounds ridiculous, right? But I heard it as clear as a fucking bell. It was a complete sentence, and I looked at her with my mouth open and then looked at my partner and went, this is what she's just said. And he looked at me like that and he went, okay. And we changed where she was sleeping, and there was no fucking issue with her at that point on. She became the most affectionate dog, because I heard her. Now, you can't have experiences like that and say, yes, we need to go work a 9 till 5 and do this and do that and the other, right? There's some aspect of reality that got challenged there. And that for me is that my dog can talk to me if she needs to. She can literally make herself understood in English, in human words. Now, it wasn't that weird for me, to be honest, because my fucking plants have talked to me before, right? It's a thing. When you start to have these sorts of experiences and you don't disregard them, you don't two of swords them, and you go, no, that's a real thing that just actually fucking happened. When you have a dream and it tells you that the rings and the lids that you bought for your canning were too small, and you're like, what the fuck? No, they weren't. And then you go and open the box and you go, they were too fucking small. Like, what the fuck? Do you know that there is something much bigger going on than what you have been participating in? And whether you believe it's God or creator or source or the universe, whatever your word is for it, we're all talking about the same thing. It's paying special attention to you and saying, can you just shift just a little bit in your thinking? Can you take ownership of what feels a little bit weird, but is a doorway to something else? Because I believe the Justice card here is about the balancing of a situation that has looked like this. Right? All the power and all the weight has been on one side, and it has been on the side of the people that are pursuing their own fucking interests whilst claiming to represent yours. Now, you can take that as a political statement, or you can take it as whatever you like. I mean, I broadly think that this is an apolitical situation, personally. I think it goes much higher than that. But the way that we pull the balance back is by saying, well, no, actually, do you know what? I don't consent to be ruled. I have one point of authority, and it is me. Some people will have that psychological trait. As my daughter, who was doing a psychology degree at the time, told me, oh, you're one of those people who has that psychological trait where you don't believe what people tell you. You have to make your decision for yourself. I'm like, yes. Why is that weird? I don't know why that is weird, but it is. Apparently just 10% of the population currently possess that psychological trait. Now, you know what I think, I think that science and the spiritual, however you want to call it, right? I think they're different words to describe the same fucking processes. So whether it's quantum science or whether it's psychology or whatever, like, we're all talking about the same fucking thing. And there's very little that is pulling this together. And I'm just kind of sitting here going, well, I've just been waiting for everybody to notice they're the same thing. Maybe many of you have been sitting waiting for everybody to notice that they're basically the same fucking thing. The difference is we witches, we don't wear white coats, right? We wear black ones, or we don't wear anything at all. There are so many things shifting here, and your access to them, your power within them, the acquisition of purpose in this lifetime is recognizing that you have a part to play in shifting the tide, and for some reason it starts really solidly now. Oh, perhaps this is because of the first week that we have with Saturn in Aries, right? I've heard a lot of people saying that's going to be awesome, and it's not that I'm black-pilled about it, but I'm like, I am always cognizant of the challenges, because the challenges is where the work is, and where the work is, that's where the growth is. So I don't want to sugarcoat anything and go, oh, this is going to be absolutely sensational. Like, we are literally constructing a new reality. And there's going to be a lot that is incredibly fucking confrontational for people to deal with. I don't think a lot... this is not going to be an easy transition at all. But the question is, do you want to be subject to a new reality, or do you want to be a participant in, an architect of that new reality? Because if you do, you have to understand that it starts with you. In very small little ways, allowing yourself to entertain ideas that seem a little bit fucking out there. Like digging out what it is that has been obfuscated in your own mind, and you don't know that it has, right? You don't know what you don't know. You can't see what you can't see until you start to look for something that may be there or may not be there. You don't know, right? It's about the opening of the mind. It's about choosing to be conscious. It's about choosing to redress the balance. That's Two of Swords. Got the Page of Wands. We've got, oh, look at this, all these sideways cards. We've got the Seven of Wands. We've got the Page of Wands. We've got the Three of Wands. I really like this, because the Seven of Swords for me is a card of calculated risks. It's about strategy, right? Here's an energy that is waiting to be discovered. Is it going to involve you taking a risk? Yeah, in some way, because you are literally stepping outside the bounds of reality as you understand them. Are you ready to take that journey? Well, if you don't know that the journey is possible, then probably you haven't been ready to take the journey. But now, let's say you are ready to start thinking about the fact that maybe this is possible. That there are ways that you can push your mind that can completely alter the perception of what you are engaged in right down here on this planet. And if that is true, and it is also true that you create your own reality, suddenly the way forward, although not clear, is kind of obvious. It's not clear because it's not certain, and it's not certain because it's not solid. I think reality has had a malleability about it for the last 5 years that I don't remember feeling at any other point in my life before. That King of Swords, Ten of Swords. I like that. I like that a lot. So I've actually been talking about the Ten of Swords in exactly the way that I'm just going to tell you about it now, which is to say, the Ten of Swords represents to me the end of a cycle of a very restricted, very narrow type of thinking. Right? This is Sun and Gemini. And people don't like the Ten of Swords, and for, understandable reasons. I mean, look how fucking brutal that card looks right there. But wherever we have the Sun, we have illumination. And wherever we have Gemini, we have integration of perspectives. So what we have here is a light being shone on different ways of thinking about things. Different ways of processing the information that isn't new. This information isn't new. Two of Swords tells us that. This information has always been there. But for whatever reason, chosen not to see it. But once you do see it, you can't unsee it. If you look back over your life, there are probably times where something really fucking weird has happened. It might have been a rather uncanny coincidence, right? And a spectacularly improbable coincidence that occurred nonetheless. It could have been some sort of weird experience. Oh, I've had so many fucking weird experiences, right? It might have been some sort of weird experience with something that you touched. Thinking about a very specific experience that I had there. It might have been your dog talking to you. It might have been your cat talking to you. I remember my mother telling me a cat that she had. The cat was called Charlie. Well, this was a story that I know was one of the levels of trauma of my mother's existence, right? But I remember telling me about this when I was about 8. She had a cat. It was a tiny little cat. She loved it more than life itself, right? This cat was her comfort in a very wretched existence. And she was sat on the sofa one day, and she would have been about 14. No, she'd have been younger, about 13. And her cat was walking across the mantelpiece, and in her head she went, "Charlie." And the cat went brrr, and turned around and looked at her, and I was like, whoa. And she was like, yeah, she totally heard me. Now, there's a fairly tragic ending to that story. Which is essentially her schizophrenic sister threw the cat to a pack of dogs, who then ripped her apart. Pretty traumatizing shit, particularly with some other creature that you have a really strong bond with, right? I just throw that in as a, completing the story. Maybe it's a little weird hunch that you had about something, some little intuitive nudge or a gut feeling that something wasn't quite right. Maybe you weren't in the right place and maybe you had to go away. Like, our lives are full of these kinds of experiences. And sometimes we might hold on to those with a sense of wonder and go, that was quite weird, and tell people about it, right? And see what they think. What do you think that? Isn't that weird that happened? And some of you may just immediately dismiss them as coincidence and go, well, obviously, clearly, that was a raging coincidence. And what I would ask of you this week is that you sit with those experiences, whether they've been one or two, or whether they have been many peppered across your life, right? Just sit with those. And ask yourself, what if they were not, in fact, coincidences, or not, in fact, an odd 1 in a million strange thing, but in fact God, or Source, or the Creator, or the universe, knocking on the door of your life and saying, have you considered the possibility that there may be things here that you're not letting yourself see, that you're not letting yourself engage with? Because the changes that are happening to humanity now are not about whether they're not centered on and restricted to whether there is some overarching, fucking transgovernmental puppeteer above us pulling strings and, increasing control. Although I think that is happening, right? The true difference, the true changes that are happening here are happening within the human mind and the level to which it is open or is not open. Now, we've got completion, we've got closure here of the collective and the thinkings of the collective. Not because they're told to think about things differently, but because they are engaging with their own mind and recognizing that they don't know what they don't know, they can't see what they can't see, that we are all subject to propaganda at all times. None of us are immune from it. And that the work starts here, in your own life. I've been a raging contrarian my entire fucking existence, which is really strange for somebody who was looking at a career in law. I accept that. But I was always a little bit on the edges of shit. I think I managed to bring my contrarianism in quite nicely within that, because I was always looking to challenge myself, but also challenge the law. Essentially what I'm advocating for here is some contrarianism, people. But not, like I said, upwards. I'm talking about inwards. I'm talking about you challenging the paradigm that you are living in, or more specifically, your perception of the paradigm that you are living in. The Justice card is the great balancing. Some people say it's a representation of natural law, of the order of the universe. And that's why karma and consequence play such a large role in this, right? Because if you're not aware of these things, then you blunder about, right? There's no balancing, there's no repaying of karmic debts, right? Where you have shifted the balance towards the abusive in a previous life. There's none of that. It doesn't happen. It's only with mindfulness, it's only with awareness, it's only with expansion of mindful consciousness. Like your subconscious, it's a direct link to what is bigger than us. Your conscious mind says, no, we're not going to play that game. We're not going to play around with that. Five of Wands and the Empress. Eight of Swords at the bottom of the deck. The Five of Wands it's conflict, right? Sometimes it can be internal conflict, sometimes it can be external conflict. But it can also be competition. And sometimes when I see the Five of Wands, I feel like it's putting yourself in the game. It's like, oh no, actually, okay, there are some stakes here, and I have some skin in this game. Right? Because I am an expression of universal consciousness wearing a skin suit right now. So whether I like it or not, my skin is actually in this game, and I have a job to do. My job to do is to balance what has been violently unbalanced. And what's been violently unbalanced is the programming of our minds to believe that we are very, very small and we can't make a difference. Five of Wands says, whether you like it or not, you're all part of what is playing out here. And I like the Empress here. I've always loved the Empress as an expression of Taurus energy, because where the Hierophant is restricted and rigid, and actually probably an expression of everything that I've been talking about for, fuck me, the last 46 minutes, right? The Empress is something wilder, something much more connected to not just nature, but the moon. Right? We've got the moon here, right? To the sense that chaos only looks like chaos when you don't perceive the pattern. The upgrade of humanity that is happening is that we're being attuned to a different kind of pattern, and as the old one is breaking down, right, this just looks like chaos. It just looks like this opportunism everywhere, and everything's just breaking down, and there's decay and there's disorder, and it's just overwhelming and frightening. But what if we're just sloughing that off and we're all individually being retuned to a different kind of reality? There's a new kind of pattern that is emerging, and the answers to the new pattern are to be found in the existence that you have lived so far. So when I beseech you to go back and look at all the weird things that have happened in your life, the things that you could not explain, and the things that you've either, pushed to the side because you couldn't explain them, or they have just bugged you, maybe even for decades, they just bugged you. And say, this was flashes of the pattern being shown to you, the not the new pattern, right, but removing the obstacles to the bigger pattern, the perception of the bigger pattern. The King of Swords in the middle. The workings of the mind, the active workings of the mind, critical thinking, good judgment, all of these kind of things like that. It revolves around the choice that we make to decide to engage with that. If we choose to believe what we hear on fucking BBC or Fox or CNN or whatever, anybody who is self-appointed fucking foghorn telling you what to think, then that's your choice. But if you choose to work things out on the basis of what you have experienced, your understanding of that experience, your engagement with that experience, even if it leads you to a framework of reality that is very fucking different to what you've been told it is. Is that not the more real thing? I think it's the more real thing. Whenever the Empress shows up, we've got an idea of something being gestated. There's an act of creation which is the birth of something new into the world, but that follows a different act of creation that exists in the dark, that happens where people can't see it. And to my mind, that would be what's happening within you, all of you. And the external expression of that coming later has got a cohesion to it that we can't quite yet perceive. Woo. So, with everything that I've just said over the last 51 minutes, my God, I'm so fucking sorry, holy shit. Let's push these cards to the side and recognize that there is some terminating event that is happening here within our own minds, right? Which is to say the termination of a particular very narrow way of thinking, which will very soon be replaced with a very obvious expression of a very new kind of thinking. But first we have to challenge. We have to look within and look for where all the clues are about, like, what exists beyond. Sorry, just losing myself in some memories there of stuff. Anyway, I did say we would look sign by sign, so let's do this. Aries. Well, that makes a lot of sense, right? Aries as the first. Aries as the spark of creation. It would make sense that the truly profound sense of endings and completions should start with you, right? It's like, whoa, the whole fucking world is not what I thought it was. There's something very liberating in this, and I mean this very genuinely. Like, this is a point of liberation for us, because the way that you have been constructing reality has formed part of a pattern that is now ending. And Aries, although you may not be a leader per se, in so much as you turn around and say, come on everybody, follow me this way, you are a leader in terms of cutting a swathe through what the new thing is, right? Independent, explorative, all that kind of thing, right? But in order for you to step up to the mark to be that, big closure, big completion this week, particularly if it has you questioning reality on some sort of level. You're definitely going in the right direction. What do we have next? Taurus. Seven of Wands. There's an argument that I would have made a few years ago that Taurus would find this transition the hardest, right? Because there's something about Taurus being fixed earth, being our point of connection to everything material, that says that, you know, you're going to find the transition the hardest, right? You've got the most invested in the solidity of things, the security of things. But what I've seen Taurus do in the last year kind of kicks that into the long grass, because the work that Uranus has done with you, I think, has been spectacular. It's been profound. And I feel that Taurus, of all of the signs, have entrenched themselves beautifully in a space of flexibility that says, I don't know what the future holds. I don't actually know what the future is about, but I'm here and I'm working with it. And where a version of you would have been swept away a few years ago by the state of the world and the way that things are, you know, at the moment, because there's flexibility in your emotions, you're able to stand firm exactly where you are. And for Tauruses, I would expect to see that if you spend a bit of time thinking about the things that I've been asking you to think about, the weird stuff in your life, I feel like Tauruses are starting to actually allow that bit of them to be seen. And what's huge about that is that you are allowing yourself, as we have seen you learning to do over the course of the last few years, to stand apart from everyone else. It's time to let your weird light shine, Taurus. Whatever it is that you know, whatever it is that you think, I think you need to be seen to be holding that position, because you feel to me like you're waking people up. There was a point a few years ago, this maybe it's about 2021, where I had a series of comments that said over about 6 months of people saying, you gave me permission to come out of the broom closet. And I was like, did I? Awesome. I didn't, but you know, you gave yourself permission to come out of the broom closet, and that's the important thing. I feel like there's a bigger version of that happening for you this week, Taurus. And because you are not afraid to stand up for what you believe in, I think you're going to inspire a lot more people than you'd credit. So, Gemini. Ooh, Gemini gets 2. King of Pentacles, Taurus energy. 4 of Swords, Libra energy. Not that either of those things matter. I feel like for you, Gemini, there's a need here for you to take a break, to take a step back, right? That's the energy of the 4 of Swords, just kind of objectively observe. And with the King of Pentacles here, it's objectively observe what it is that you think that you have been creating and whether this is in alignment with what you want. Because I feel like for a lot of Geminis, there's been a socially acceptable version of whatever Gemini has been doing that actually it feels a little staid for you this week. I mean, give yourself permission to let that fucking Gemini mental energy fly, because there are things that you're going to see about the situation that you are in that are going to show you that it's just too it's not fully you. It's stuck in an old paradigm. And the beauty of this is that if you just let your mind go this week, I feel like the formulation of some sort of new idea, new plan, new goal moving forwards is going to come through really, really quickly for you. But you need to be able to stand back enough from your situation to be objective about it. And I think wherever there are any issues, and these possibly issues that, you know, have shown up at points over the last few months, sufficient for you to go, oh, well, I probably can't do that. I think you're going to find an entirely different way to look at those, and you're going to be moving in a slightly different direction. So, Cancer. Cancer, please. Cancer, the Hierophant. And the Hierophant is a representation of Taurus energy that I was talking about before, right? It's relatively rigid, but I like this Hierophant here because he's depicted as solitary. right? Now, obviously, solitary is not cool for Cancer. Cancer loves to have something around them to nurture, right? It's that cosmic mother energy of the zodiac. He's supposed to be a druid, this guy. The fuck is going on here? We'll come back to that. He's supposed to be a druid, but he just looks like a fucking shaman to me. Ah. There's something inherently magical about the Hierophant. And that should be kind of obvious, right? Because he's a religious leader. But here we've taken away the idea of leadership, and we've got a, can you be in what you believe? Can you be in what you stand for when you don't have an audience or people that you're reassuring, right? People that you're trying to tell everything will be okay. Like, it feels to me like a going down to your fundamental principles of what you believe spiritually. And I think that this is really important, particularly when we're showing up with these, ideas of completion this week, because it's saying there are ideas that you've held about the universe for the longest fucking time, right? Or God, source, creator, whoever, whatever. And your part in all of this. And for most of you, I feel like you have been afraid to really allow yourself to believe that because of what it implies. And what it implies is that you yourself are important. Like there's a bigger role for you to play, and whether you've been afraid of living up to your potential, or afraid that you've just been making it up or whatever, like there's a return to the basics here and go, no, actually, okay, this is entirely what I fucking believe, and from this point on I will be living my life according to these principles and no other. There's no sense of you wanting to fit in. The irony of that is that it's going to draw people towards you who are in alignment with how you think, but in the first instance you have to be able to stand there on your own. A bit like Taurus in that regard. Stand there on your own and be peaceful with yourself, whether or not there's anybody there with you. What about Leo? Hello, Leo. 6 of Wands. The reason that I say hello, Leo, is because this is a Leo card, right? This is Jupiter in Leo right here. And I think it's the Jupiterian part of this that's really quite important. I think that Leo's been going through a lot, pretty much since 2017, right? You got a bit of a breather in 2020, but it's been kind of relentless. And what it's made is such a deep and powerful version of you. May not have felt like it was getting that, that would be the outcome when you were going through whatever experiences that you've had. But nevertheless, this is what has happened. And I do feel like, just as I was saying to Taurus, you need to allow your weird light to shine. Almost saying to Cancer, things of a similar nature, right? They're slightly different with both of those. With you, Leo, it's like, prepare to be incredibly fucking visible with what you think, what you feel, and what you have been through, and the ways in which this has shaped and changed not just your idea of success, but what it is to be alive in 2025 and be a Leo, right? Whenever I meet a Leo, I'm always like, props, because I know, certainly the kind of Leos that I meet anyway, right? I know they've been through a lot. And that changes people. Right? Any placement that you have in Leo is being opposed by Pluto right now, and that's not going to be a walk in the park. Although what I don't want, and I really don't want this, is people looking around for inspiring figures to follow. I really don't want that. in the first instance, I think, well, we're trying to wake people up to the idea of sovereignty and courage and bravery and standing in your own fucking principles and having the courage of your convictions. Like, Leo, you have to stand up and be an example of that. This is what it looks like when you go through your long dark night of the soul. This is what it looks like when you feel the fear and you fucking do it anyway. Because everybody perceives success about you, but they don't see what came before. They don't see the Five of Wands. They don't see that Saturn in Leo struggle. They don't, and they certainly won't perceive at this point either Pluto opposing anything that you have in Leo. The more that you can allow yourself to believe that there is a reason why you have been through the things that you have, right? That is quite aside from the level of comfort in your own skin that you now experience versus 10 years ago. It's to begin the process of being the very visible emblem of a consciousness shift that is only now starting to hit the masses, but you have been involved with for quite a long time. Let people see you, Leo. What about Virgo? Whew. Virgo, Queen of Pentacles. This is strictly Capricorn energy, but, you know, it's your queen. So whenever the Queen of Pentacles comes up, we have this idea of inherent value, an understanding of value, a use of value, an investment in things that are valuable. So Virgo, this week, I would, just as I've entreated everybody else to do, you know, be thinking about the weird shit, right? Well, where have the portals been that have shown you that there is something that is living outside? Well, that there is some sort of experience that is outside what we are living in right now. The Queen of Pentacles would ask you to find the value in what you have seen, but furthermore, actually spend a bit of time, invest a bit of time in you. Your thought processes, your philosophies, and work out what this actually means. Again, I feel like there's an element of visibility here with you, Virgo. It's very down to earth. It's perhaps not as dramatic and flary as we would expect to see in Leo, but nevertheless, like, you're in a very good position to be able to show people the value of what it is that you have learned and what it is that you have the ways in which you have changed. There's something very... It's almost like if the earth signs can do it, then everybody else can do it. You know, there's no doubt at all. And you can stand there as a representation of an internal processing of all of these kinds of experiences. With your analytic ability and your attention to detail, and then to be able to express that outside of yourself as well. I think people will be looking to you for a grounded integration of these kind of experiences and these kind of philosophies and whatever, right? You don't have to be dreadlocked and, you know, wearing fucking next to nothing and dancing around in the fucking Burning Man festival to be spiritual. There are practices that you can bring to the table day in, day out, that are an expression of your relationship to the divine. It could be that you're going to see people coming to you for advice. Everything's fucking weird, everything's fucking strange, I don't know what to make of it. I'm going to talk to Virgo about it. Because Virgo's got a take that is quite useful. Libra, Ten of Swords. Now, I like the Ten of Swords for reasons that I've already outlined over the course of this reading right here, but I'm a little bit concerned about the fact that the Ten of Swords is showing up sideways for you. It feels like there's something quite confrontational about this for you, which is interesting because, you know, the kind of dominant energy, if you will, is your energy. It's the Justice card. And I wonder if it's because for you there is some big shift in the way that you think about yourself. Like whenever we get a major arcana card showing up that represents a particular sign, usually there are some sort of extended issues around identity, like who you are, what you think, what you stand for, and what that means in terms of what you project out there into the world. Now, the fact that it's showing up on its side feels to me that it feels more affecting to you, because it's not just happening on the level of, you know, what reality is and how you engage with it and all that kind of thing, but it's sitting deeply in the idea of what it is to be you. And I think for some of you that might lead to a feeling of spiraling a little bit this week. But if you can catch yourself in the moment and say the spiraling is the representation of actually what needs to end. Maybe you've been too attached to the kind of identity that you have held up until this point. I mean, this is saying like you've got the choice. And we're back to that idea again of a choice. You've got the choice of accepting a Ten of Swords or rejecting it, repelling it, and saying, actually, no, I'm quite comfortable with the way that I see the world. I'm quite comfortable with all of this thing. But I think Libra, as a sign that is involved with others, but like Cancer, like by definition, you're involved with others. You're a very social creature. If everybody around you is changing, then this is going to have some sort of effect on you in the future. And it's better that you grab this by the horns and say, no, actually, this is, I am willing to undergo this kind of metamorphosis that seems to be very pointedly happening at me this month. This week, fucking hell, we're not even talking about a month. All of this is just about this week. Then it's not just that you get the benefit of the Ten of Swords, but you also get the benefit of having the courage of pulling in that Ten of Swords in the first place. It's like a double whammy of improvement in your own existence. But I would be on guard for the potential for spiraling. Where are we at, Libra? Scorpio. What about Scorpio? Come on, Scorpio, where are you at? High Priestess. I knew the High Priestess was coming out for somebody. I could feel her weighing quite heavily. Goes without saying, this is a week where intuition seems to be heightened. Perhaps sorry, I don't know what that noise is, but it seems to be emanating from my back garden. Let me pause this a sec. Oh no, it's done. All right. Increased intuition, increased openness, and so therefore the possibility of some big informational dumps happening into your space. Fuck's sake, sorry about that. There's perils of living in a house at the same time as you're trying to renovate it occasionally. It's just... Anywho, so obviously when we're talking about the High Priestess, we're talking about an open vessel, right? And well, vessel is even the wrong word, right? An open conduit, because it's not that things are just plopping in and staying there. With the High Priestess, there's a moving through of things, right? Now, increased intuition, highly likely. Maybe even increased psychic events, that's incredibly likely as well, particularly if you have found yourself going back over things and going, do you know what, there were some fucking weird things that happened in my teens or in my 20s and I just haven't even thought about them for 20 years, 30 years, whatever. But actually, now you mention it, what the fuck did that even mean, right? I feel like there's an emotional connection for you that is bringing in all sorts of new information, possibly simply because you are looking at it with new eyes. But I would say that for you, it's about holding space for those things to come through and be processed. Because you are witnessing not only that within your own life, but I think you're going to be witnessing it within other people as well. It isn't necessarily time for you to share what you know at this point. because I think there's a little bit too much information coming in this week for that to be a useful thing for you to do. This week, it's more about you internally processing it, holding the space for this stuff to come in, and dealing with any emotional ramifications that might bring too. Because it could be that some of these experiences have been connected to things that you have found emotionally problematic in the past. I think that you will find, and I do feel this very, very strongly actually, that if there have been difficult emotions associated with those, and possibly this is one of the reasons why that has been blocked out, it's going to be much, much easier for you to work through that this week than any other week up until this point. And I think it's because you're ready now. Like, whatever that is, whatever it pops up, you're like, there it is, that's fine. It's not kind of throwing you straight down into Hades like it might have done before if it had come up unbidden before. I have a blister right on the end of my fucking finger. How has that happened? I don't even know. Swear to God, I'm falling apart. I've got a blister on there from when I was fucking earthing up my potatoes. And I got a little bit excited with a caustic pencil here. And accidentally, my entire thumb's going to fall off. All right. Anyway, that's Scorpio. So, where do we go from Scorpio? We go to Sagittarius. Let's have a look at Sagittarius. Okay, Sagittarius, we have the Nine of Wands. This is very interesting because it is a Sagittarius card. Hello, Sagittarius, just as we saw hello with Leo. It's Moon, so it's about the subjective experience, right? Subjective emotional experience around things that you do. I feel like for a lot of Sagittarians, there are things that you're kind of... I feel like there are things that you've been getting intuitive nudges about for a little while. And you haven't quite known how to action them. You haven't really quite known how to work with them. And so you've almost sort of stuck them on the shelf and been like, well, until I work out what this is about, I'm not going to do anything with it. What's interesting, though, is there is, again, an emotional component to this. So there's been something that's felt a little bit threatening about it. And whether it's because it's going to require you to be more visible, whether it's requiring you to take some sort of stand, there is the expectation here, and we see it in this chat with the Nine of Wands, that some aspect of what you're dealing with is something that could attract negative attention. Right? Criticism, judgment, that sort of thing. Now, ordinarily, that's something that you deal with you weather that quite well, right? It's just like water off a duck's back, like, fuck them, whatever. But there's something quite deep in this here that it seems to be rattling you a little bit. Now, because it's a 9, we're talking about the active management of this thing. And it's like, here is a situation where fear is presenting. In your mind, you may have reconciled it to be something else, but ultimately what's sitting at the bottom of it is a fear. And it's asking you to feel that and do it anyway, right? You might be a little bit like, preemptive bandages and whatnot. But I feel like the fear of the thing bears very little resemblance to the reality of the thing. Because remember, we are challenging the premises of reality that we have been working to for a long time. And so whatever it is that you've been afraid of, particularly with regard to exposure, visibility, there's a defensive posture here. It's kind of like, I'm a bit scared about this. Like, I don't want this to sound shitty, but like, you're bigger than this. And this is not a criticism like, oh God, how you're acting in such a low way. I'm not trying to say that, Sagittarius. I'm saying, like, realize how fucking big you are. Realize how much people have probably been looking at you for the longest time anyway. It's time for you to own this shit. And the weirder the shit, the better, actually, is what I'm saying here. There really is nothing to be afraid of. And I think because, generally speaking, you don't tend to succumb to fear in the same way as a lot of the other signs, because you have this self-confidence, right? You have this awareness of self that comes with fire. I don't know, it seems to be touching on something that feels very self-like, that is a degree of vulnerability that you're not quite sure that you can cope with, but the card is saying yes, you absolutely fucking can, and this is absolutely what you should be doing, and it's going to go a lot better than you think it will, right? Shifting the way that your mind is thinking about stuff. So Capricorn, let's have a look for Capricorn. We have the Three of Wands. Oh, it did kind of fall sideways though, didn't it? They're like, Capricorns are in a bit of a tiz with themselves at the moment because there's a desire to move forwards. That's the desire to Capricorn, right? Which is to create a plan and then work slavishly towards it. But because there is also this transitional phase that you seem to be kind of traversing at the moment, it's difficult to know even where to start with that, because there are lots of things changing. Your core values are changing. What you want out of life is changing. Your idea of success is changing. The rules of the game, as you understood them previously, now no longer apply. They're completely fucking different, and you don't feel like you're quite au fait enough with them to be able to work out what is the definite route to success, the definite route to achievement. But also within that is something that's quite interesting, because I feel like the nature of you as a beast that wants to do things like that is also changing. So my advice to you this week would be to just concentrate on being. All right. If you can right? If you can surrender to the idea that you are in a transformational stage of life right now, and any decision that you make at this point, in terms of, you know, your material position moving forwards, what you're striving towards, so on and so forth, is likely to come up for some radical change at some point in the not too distant future, then we have to accept that the more efficient way of dealing with this energy is to just allow it to play out the way that it will, right? So you're not wasting energy on things that you don't need to, and that energy can be retained for the transformation that you are going through. Now, that isn't contradictory to what we've been talking about before, which is this, you know, making decisions to view things differently. I mean, that's entirely in alignment with the thing that we're talking about here, because the shift in consciousness for you, Capricorn, is allowing yourself the space to change rather than trying to do it on the hoof, while you are also trying to strive towards whatever next thing you're trying to get done. Very task oriented, right? It's like, well, the tasks that might be important now, but it might not be important in 2 weeks' time. Are you going to expend the energy on the off chance? A past version of you would probably have said yes, because there's nothing a Capricorn likes less than being unprepared for something. But at the same time, the space that you're in right now is the thing that is preparing you for the future. And so it actually behooves you to allow all of that energy to congregate there and change the way that it will. So don't worry too much about doing anything. Don't worry too much about picking a direction. Allow your consciousness to shift enough to value you in this moment and honor your process, you know? Aquarius. Let's have a look at Aquarius. We've got the Judgment card. The only reversal that we've had showing up here. Now, this is quite interesting. Do we accept this being a reversal? Do we accept this being a reversal? Yeah, we do. All right. Everything's about to change for you, right? You thought you had it nailed down. You thought you understood what was going on, but actually it's something kind of different. And that's fine. It's no comment on your cognitive abilities or anything like that. It's just that something fairly big is happening here for you. Now, maybe we can relate this to Pluto being in retrograde, right? Whenever we have a planet in retrograde, we're going back over things. So it could be that you're going back over decisions that you've already made and testing those. So like, actually, was that the right decision? I'm not sure that it was. But there's a sense of kind of burrowing into yourself that I'm feeling quite strongly here. because the change in consciousness for you is perhaps the idea that you don't have all of the answers. I think Aquarius is a sign that prides itself on not necessarily having all the answers, but certainly having all of the information enough that we can debate it and we can talk about it and we can thrash out ideas. But something fundamentally is changing with you, Aquarius, which means that some of the pre-existing ideas that you have had and the ways that you've explored them seem to be shifting like sand actually underneath you, and you're like, hang on, that thing that seemed really quite plausible just a few short months ago now is looking considerably less than. And there's an internal confrontation going on where you're challenging your own paradigm, right? It's like an enhanced version of essentially what is happening with everyone. Maybe for you, the confrontational part of something is that you're going to have to come down on a side of a thing and really dig into what that means for you, rather than trying to keep it light and see all sides at all times. But it doesn't feel like you have a lot of control over what it is that is shifting around for you right now. Almost like you're kind of it's almost like your mind's taken over the reins of this, like, and it's thrashing you soundly and saying, no, this is not what we believe, this is not what we're about, and this is not how we're going to move forwards. And that feels striking. I don't feel like it's coming at the hands of anybody else. I feel like it's just some part of your brain putting something together that maybe it missed before, and it's like, oh God, right, there are consequences to this. And maybe there are consequences in terms of the way that you see yourself, but certainly consequences in terms of the way that you understand the narrative of the life that you have lived so far. And it all feels a little bit muddled, but at the same time, it does feel like you're being taken in hand, slapped, and said, no, this is it. It's this over here. It's probably a week where you're going to find yourself a little bit frustrated with yourself, I think. Just be patient and allow it to do its thing, because I think the clarity that comes hereafter is going to stun you, actually. You're going to be surprised that you didn't see it that way before, you know. Finally, Pisces. Wow. Okay, Pisces. Pisces, you got the Justice card. That feels really strong. It feels really, really strong. I think we can't fix things. Fix things, is that even the right word? We can't rectify things and rebalance things until we know what the issues have been. And I feel like, you know, the node is in Pisces, North Node is in Pisces at the moment, right? Pushing towards Piscean things and Piscean themes of acceptance. I think we have to accept collectively that things are wrong in order to accept that things need to change. And it makes sense that the last sign in the zodiac that would be, you know, pulling together essentially a summary of what the previous cycle has been. And I can't even tell you what that previous cycle is. I don't know if it relates to the nodes or whether it relates to, you know, the cycles of the nodes, or whether it relates to Saturn doing its thing, or whether it is the culmination of all of these things together. And it, you know, Pisces, for you, it would make sense that it's a culmination of everything. It feels like this is a very karmic time where you can be incredibly fucking influential, because there's a way that you can highlight things this week that helps everybody else on their way. So if you've got a thought about something, you've got a feeling about something, like, don't be afraid to share it, because I think that there is there's a point of a pin that you seem to be balancing on this week, Pisces, where you can express compassion, express empathy, be a Pisces about things, but you can also bring some truth and deliver it in a way that is really fucking impactful for people this week. So again, the corollary of that is, just like we saw with Virgo, who's interestingly South Node energy at the moment, right? So your opposite sign. This idea that there will be people coming to you for your perspective on things. And for you, it's really, really important that you don't shy away from the truth of anything. You deliver it in that way that you can, that is supportive and makes people feel seen and is compassionate, but don't shy away from whatever essential truth you feel like somebody needs to hear in that moment, right? This is not a point for going, oh, well, I should just keep this to myself because it might upset someone, or like, have faith in your ability to be able to deliver this in a way that is impactful and compassionate and creates change. There's a lot of energy here for that, for you this week. Shit's getting very fucking surreal, but you would expect that with everything that's... I literally cannot believe I've sat here for an hour and a half of chuntering on. So, to my mind, a very, very important week. I actually have no idea beyond Saturn going into Aries what the astrology is of this week. But I have felt for quite a long time that Saturn moving into Aries is going to be a bigger deal than we've allowed ourselves to think about. Right, all the astrologers are now rushing to get their Saturn in Aries videos out and all that kind of thing, but like it's not one thing in isolation, it's the combination of all of the things together. But I think Saturn in Aries is the point where everything starts to take form, take shape, where we can start to perceive the thing. And I think that's going to be a lot for everyone. So, sorry for chuntering on for so very fucking long at you. I have no idea why I've done this, but like, this has felt like a big week. Very airy week. I hope that you found this useful. Because that's the only thing I want, is to be useful. And if I'm not useful, I shall go away and do something else. I hope that you have a wonderful week. Try not to slip into the void too much, like I did a few months ago, when you think too hard about things, like you literally think yourself out of existence, which is pretty much what I did. But do be prepared to challenge a lot that is going on in here, because I think there are, whether it's things that are happening over the course of the week or whether it's the way that the energy just presents, I think that there isn't really going to be any way of getting away from this need to start challenging internal paradigms and patterns of thinking and whatnot. And we're getting closer as every day passes to a greater appreciation of the new pattern, the new level of pattern, the new complexity of pattern, I guess. All right. Know that I love you all very, very much. And I'll see you soon.